want the mic? Okay, most people didn't want it, sorry.
Okay. I agree with him how he said that making, like, without her smile being visible, she's kind of less approachable. And like, I kind of thought of it like if I was walking outside and it was dark outside and I needed to ask somebody for directions, I would probably skip asking her because I can't see her face. And when I see that everything is covered, like what comes in my mind is like when somebody's robbing a bank, they cover everything. I don't know if that's offensive, but like when somebody's robbing
Probably
a bank.
to her, yeah, it is offensive, but you're saying from your perspective, okay.
Yeah, but yeah, so when somebody's robbing a bank, they cover everything and they don't want their face to be shown. So if I were to see her outside in the dark, I'd probably skip asking her. Even though I probably, like, from the video, I know she's a good person, but if I didn't know her, I didn't know.
So you're saying like it does create a barrier, that's your point. Your point is that as much as she may feel that it's not creating a barrier, for you and maybe others, it does create a barrier, whether it's a smile or whatever, you know, that face-to-face communication.
And that's only for the one that's fully covered.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something in opposition to that. I've like always like considered what the hijab means. I'm not Muslim myself, but I really appreciate like all that it stands for, especially. Forgive me, I forget her name, but when she said that the completely veiled woman said that it was like so that you wouldn't look at her facial beauty and instead would try to understand her as a person and for her character. And I had never thought of it from that perspective, but I really appreciate that. I think like we all as humans, or I know I'm speaking for myself and probably the large majority, judge people based on what they look like or what they're wearing. And I thought it was a really revolutionary idea to instead cover that part of you so that you can't be judged for your appearances and instead get to prove yourself as a person based on your character instead.
Thank you for sharing that. I guess that comes up specifically because we live in such a hypersexual society that everything is just so, I mean, porn industry is considered like the third largest, right, in this country in terms of like the revenue. So yeah, obviously there is a correlation there. I'm not saying that that's exactly why she wears it, but when the one with the blue hijab, Sumaya, when she says, well, clearly there's, you know, men and women are perceived differently in some ways, that's a very philosophical statement in itself. I mean, you know, you can take that and say, well, why is it that, you know, a female is covering, a man should cover exactly the same way too, and the attraction could be the same or not the same, but the point you're making is that the value of what she was saying still stands, right? That she feels that she should be known not necessarily for physical attraction, but rather for what is there to offer in an intellectual sense. Okay, we'll take this last person.
No, I mean, like, I was just saying that the fact that, like, somebody wouldn't approach her because she's had a veil, like, furthers the stereotype. And it's like, if you want to, like, bring people towards your religion in your community, then you should show it for what it is. You shouldn't be ashamed of one part of it. You should be showing it for what it is, and if that's part of wearing a hijab, then you should show that with, like, pride and embarrassment.
Okay, well, thank you. And then we'll take one last person.
Well, as a Muslim myself, I understand where both women are coming from, or all three of them technically, but I think both women kind of are missing the fact that the whole point of like their beliefs, they're doing it for like God or for Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so like in their discussion, they just like the way people look at them, like the public looks at them, but they kind of like forgot like the main goal is like the reason we wear this is yes to like for like modesty and for like other people to perceive us a certain way, but overall at the end of the day, it's like forgot. So like that was kind of the key point that both like arguments were missing. And then the end of the day as well, like it's how you practice it, how like you like embody your faith. She does it by not wearing the veil. The other one does it by wearing the veil, and that's not all there is to the way they practice their faith. So it's just like something to consider.
Okay, so there are two aspects to this entire conversation, right? There's so much to say in terms of like the different perspectives, and I'm sure that when you have conversations about what you thought about what Sumaya or Sonia or Sheikh Al-Kathiri said, you know, each one of them said interesting things. I think, to be honest, I found each one of their perspectives quite interesting. What I'd like to to do now, though, is to ask ourselves, when we talk about this topic, there are often two things that come up. One is the average American who's not Muslim, the only lens so far, for the most part, that they view Islam through is mainstream media, right? I mean, that's the truth. Unless you are taking a class on like Islam 101 or Quran, or Kim seriously teaches here, right? So like if you're taking like with Hermanson or seriously or whoever else, like the basic foundation that you may have is of Judaism and Christianity, right? Because in this country, for the most part, the legacy of traditions has been through that. Unfortunately, what's lost also, though, is that most people don't know that Islam has been here since the latter part of the 17th century through the West African slave trade, right? So a lot of West Africans were actually brought to the United States, and Muslims have been here for a very long time. It's just that they haven't been building civic institutions, right? So mosques started around the 50s, 1950s. So the first concern that the average American may have, even for some Muslims, is this oppressive, right? Is this taking away from the democratic understanding that America wants to spread around the globe, right? That this idea that this is what democracy looks like and this is what it should look like in all different parts of the world. The other aspect of this is, well, why do they really wear it, right? I mean, is it because of a spiritual connection to God, or is it because the men, Muslim men, are forcing them to do it, right? And those are I think the two main themes that often come up. Regardless of what you believe, whether you believe that, yeah, you know, people should be able to wear anything and everything, or that no, there should be a restriction on, like when you said that this girl, when she's completely covered, she could be someone who, God forbid, is like, look, to you, she looked like someone who could be robbing a bank, and that perhaps if you were the governing body of the land, you may ask people to not cover their faces, right? I mean, am I right? Maybe you're not sure about that. Okay. My point is, in either case, right? We live in a country that guarantees, because of our First Amendment rights, we live in a country that guarantees religious freedom, and that includes the choice to wear what we want, right? And in France, however, that's not the case. And there's a professor at the University of Chicago, Martha Nussbaum, who has a book out called The New Religious Intolerance. You need to read that if you haven't. She talks about how France very strategically was able to change this idea that hijab, basically they don't use the word hijab in the ban, but they use all sorts of different things that could basically be like, you can go out in the public if it's really, really cold and cover your head and cover your face. But if you are, or you can wear costumes for a parade. But the publicly wearing a symbolic piece on you, which is related to religion, is not permitted. But small crosses are, and then the kippas are. So is the hijab being specifically targeted? Obviously, but they don't use the word hijab, and that's the interesting part. Cute little girl saying, "Stop that!" Right?
Can we see that again?
Yeah, sure. Here we go. Anyway, President Obama actually, when he was in Cairo, he actually asked France to avoid dictating what clothes a Muslim woman should wear, and that it creates more hostility, and it creates, you know, it just feeds into that idea that, oh, the West is always against Muslim women or Islam. Karen Armstrong, who is a scholar as well that you should definitely look into, she says, the veiled woman has, over the years, become a symbol of Islamic self-assertion and a rejection of Western cultural hegemony. So in this case, she's saying a hijabi can be a feminist, right? Because in essence, she's doing it not necessarily because she feels that she's subjugated by men, but because she feels that that's her God-given right. So here's Tony Blair's sister-in-law, who says, in the West, we are stressed for superficial reasons, like what clothes to wear. In Islam, everyone looks to a higher goal. Everything is done to please God. The only thing I don't like about this picture is, like, before she wore the hijab, she's all smiley and happy, and then all of a sudden she's like, you know, I don't know, I don't know how that happened, sorry. I just picked two random pictures, right? Sorry about that. You have, models, right, who are not Muslim, like Victoria's Secret model, who quits and says that she feels that she no longer wants her body to be just out there for, consumption by everyone. That her body is really for what? She says, only for my husband, whoever she marries in the future, right? Now, someone may look at this and say, okay, she just got evangelized by some Christians in her community. Maybe she did. But nevertheless, if she came to that conclusion because she felt that her body was being exposed in ways that she didn't feel necessary, then that's fine. The other question we often get then is, well, if Muslim women are covered and like a guy can't see certain aspects of her beauty, then how does she eventually find love, right? And even Muslim women, a lot of young Muslim women who are not getting married are not just not getting married, but would like to get married or would like to have a companionship with another person, are often asking this question. So, is it permissible to fall in love? So the question that you get asked is, if Muslims don't date, how do they get married? And you have that girl with the face veil saying, Facebook, right? The idea in Islam is that you find somebody who's that you can have tranquility with, right? This is what the Quran says, is that the idea of marriage is that you can have tranquility and love and mercy. And obviously that's done in different ways. You have Muslims who, both of these women, they wear their veils before they got married to their husbands, right? And they're happy, they're doing all sorts of great things. The idea that, you have someone in the Bronx right here who's wearing a complete veil. You have someone in Indonesia, Pakistan. Here's a picture that I think is really powerful, right? Again, you have this man with this big beard and this thing tied around his head, and Fox News would never put this on because this would be like completely antithetical to anything that they claim. That clearly you can't see her face, but she's smiling through her eyes, right? And that she's happy, right? And that tranquility and love and mercy can exist regardless of, how she presents. This is how, obviously her husband sees her without the veil inside her house. But the reason I put this picture up here is that we're so conditioned, I think, especially myself, growing up in the United States, that men will only like me if I look a certain way, right? Or like, I'm attracted to men, that's why I'm using men, right? So like, I have to look a certain way, like I have to wear, like I have to lose this much weight, I have to look, this, whatever, I have to wear something to please the other person, right? And unfortunately, that's the case for a lot of young women growing up, and you guys can chime in if you don't feel that that's happened to you. But Islam's position is that a man and a woman, when they come together not because of obviously there should be an attraction, right? There has to be an attraction. Like that's actually part of Islamic law, that like if a guy is attractive, he needs to actually say that, yes, I like this woman, right? And that includes the fact that he's attracted to her, and vice versa. But that's not the main focus, right? The main focus is, where are you compatible? How do you plan your life, right? Where do you see yourself? Would you like to have kids? How do you, where do you see yourself 5, 10, 6, 16, 20 years from now? So it's a situation that's created through love and mercy, and then sustained through that as well. Does that make sense? So here's one of the last few slides I want to share with you. What she's saying with her bikini here is, everything covered but her eyes, what a cruel male-dominated culture. And on this side she's saying, nothing covered but her eyes, what a cruel male-dominant culture, right? So both of them are looking at each other and saying the same exact things. And believe me, I've interviewed women who wear the face veil, that's exactly how many of them feel. They feel like you're telling me that I'm oppressed, look at how, she's like, what do you think that women who are wearing bikinis, and I'm like, yeah, but they feel that they have the right to do so. And she's like, so I don't? And I was like, no, I'm not saying that you don't, but it seems though that, you're covered, so therefore you're limited to do a lot of things. Like she can go out and go on the beach and do whatever the heck she wants. And she's like, yeah, but there's consequences to that too. She's like, have you ever surveyed what happens to a lot of women who, are they happier? Her question was, have you surveyed them and are they happier? And have you surveyed Muslim women? And have you seen are we happier? And that's actually a recent research that started by Professor John Esposito and Dahlia Mahagan. Okay, so that's a work that you could look into. Who's actually happier? Are you happier because you have You now have the ability to have relationships with anyone you want, whether it's premarital sex or not. You can look however you want, and you are constantly worried about the way your body looks to the other. Or are you more secure in your own self-identity? Yes, sir.
Well, I'm just confused why the opposite, like, we're comparing the hijab to, like, a Victoria's Secret model. There's obviously so many
I think both of